Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the political scene. In the last couple of weeks, we lost three people who helped to shape this country's history. Former First Lady Rosalind Carter, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, and the first woman to serve on the United States Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor. Governor, I'd like your insight on the significance of these three.
Well, there's a very historic significance of all three taking roles that 10, 20 years before they assumed those roles, nobody would have seen. The First Lady being so active in the cabinet and in the administration of her husband, a woman getting onto the Supreme Court, and an immigrant, a Jewish immigrant, becoming the national security advisor and Secretary of State to two presidents here in their history. And they all pass on in their 90s or 100 within a month of each other. A lot of history will be ignored about those individuals because of the time of the year and everything. But I would think that if I was back teaching in high school like I did many, many, many years ago, I'd be spending a couple of days on each one of them to teach the young children the significant role that individuals from various backgrounds have in our country, from the legal side, from the presidential politics side, and from the diplomatic side.
I'm fascinated by the staying power of these three individuals and the influence they had for such a protracted period of time, for literally a half century. And all of them were born out of the 70s. Sandra Day O'Connor, our first Supreme Court justice, who was served as a woman to serve, became a judge in the 70s, became a Supreme Court justice, obviously in 1981, and really only three since, Justices Ginsburg and Kagan and Justice Sotomayor. So there hasn't been a lot since, and she served for nearly a quarter of a century and made an enormous impact, and people to this day know her name. Henry Kissinger, who only served 3 years and 8 months, I think, as Secretary of State, but literally advised almost every president, if not every president, and many foreign leaders continually until his passing at 100 years old. And then Rosalind Carter. When you think of American royalty, the closest thing we have is former first ladies and former presidents, and how she conducted herself with such dignity and such honor had an enormous impact on being an advocate for mental health and mental health awareness in the United States, and all the efforts at the Carter Center, including her efforts with her husband on Habitat for Humanity. What a remarkable example of family and faith. 77 years with the former president. Three remarkable stories, and it is hard to believe that we lose them in such close proximity. May they rest in peace.
I have to add one thing here, Keith. You forgot the latest female on the United States Supreme Court, Coney Barrett.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. We have. Yeah. I'm sorry. There's a fifth. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
I stand corrected.
Right. Okay. Joe, your thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to comment on Rosalind Carter, who I had the honor to meet and serve briefly in the final months of her husband's term. I think she's probably one of the finest Americans we've ever had. She did live with grace, as Keith has described it, in her work with the mentally ill, and in the way we've had to rethink our attitudes towards the mentally ill, and the funding of those programs, and the necessity to give that cause a place at the table is just remarkable. I mean, she's changed people's lives greatly and forever, and she did it with style and grace and kindness, and we were lucky to have her.
Jim, I hate to shortchange you, but if you only, I've got about 30 seconds for you.
These experts stole all my thunder. I second everything they said, but the fact that these folks have remained relevant for decades past when they served speaks to the narrative of how historic and how brilliant they all were.
All right. Well stated by all of you. Gentlemen, thank you. And I want to thank you also for joining us for this edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We hope to see you the next time. Thanks.